12 years earlier, Cayce had briefly alluded to reincarnation in one of his readings. A reading in 1911, Cayce referred to a soul being as a soul being transmigrated or reincarnated. Because Cayce's readings were not symptomatically recorded until 1923, at no point reincarnation is mentioned, but he was referring to it indirectly. Lammers then asked Cayce to come to Dayton, Ohio to pursue metaphysical truths via the readings. Cayce agreed and went to Dayton. There, Cayce produced much metaphysical information which Cayce tried to reconcile with Christianity. Again, where did these readings come from? Were they demonic or were they from God? Lammers declared that the 5th chapter of Matthew was the constitution of Christianity, and the Sermon on the Mount was the Declaration of Independence. So they're skewing some terms here. It appeared that Cayce's subconscious mind was as much at home with language of metaphysics as it was the language of anatomy and medicine. Now, Lammers wanted to ask the purpose of the readings of Cayce's clairvoyance and put up money from organizations for Cayce's healing methods. Cayce decided to accept. Okay? Now Cayce directed his activities to provide readings centered around health. This had something to do with the health that he was able to provide his wife to cure her tuberculosis. Now, the remedies that were channeled were often involved the use of electrotherapy, ultraviolet light, diet, massage, less mental work, and more relaxation, especially on a beach. His remedies were coming under the scrutiny of the American Medical Association, and Cayce felt it was time to legitimize operations with the aid of licensed medical practitioners. In 1925, Cayce reported that while in a trance, the voice had instructed him to move to Virginia Beach across the street from the beach. He believed that the sand's crystals would have curative properties to promote rapid healing. So he moved to Virginia Beach in 1925. Now, by this time, he was now a professional psychic with a small number of employees and volunteers. He had formed a true company. The readings increasingly came to involve occult themes. Now, money was still scarce, but instead of coming from people he did readings for, it came from interested persons. Cayce had a fan club. Now, Gertrude Cayce began to conduct all the readings, and Morton Blumenthal, who was a young man who worked at the stock exchange in New York with his brother, became very interested in the readings, and he shared Cayce's outlook and offered to finance the vision in the right spirit. He bought Cayce a house in Virginia Beach and started financing the whole nut roll. Now, in 1927, the Association of National Investigations was incorporated in the state of Virginia. That was Cayce and Blumenthal's company. This would manage building a hospital that Cayce had always wanted to build and a scientific study of the readings. Now, Morton was president, and his brother and several others were vice presidents. Cayce was the secretary and treasurer of the new company. Now, to protect against legal prosecution, the rules required any person requested a reading to become a member of this association, so they couldn't sue, and agreed that they were participating in an experiment in psychic research. By 1928, Moseley Brown, who was the head of a psychology department in Washington and at Washington and Lee University, became convinced that the readings were true, and he joined the association. By 1928, the dedication ceremonies of the hospital complex were complete. The hospital included a lecture hall, library, vault for storage of the readings, offices for research workers. There was also a large living room, a 12-car garage, servant quarters, and a tennis court. The first patient was admitted the next day. Edgar Cayce had arrived. Now, this facility would enable consistent checking and rechecking of the remedies, which was Cayce's goal. Okay. Now, these were consistent remedies for many illnesses regarding the patients. A chemist named Sunker Bisley, who also used clairvoyant knowledge to produce medicines, collaborated with Cayce to produce something called etomidine, and that was an absorbable form of iodine, which was perfected and then sold. Now, the basic reason for all the cures was assimilation of needed properties through the digestive system from food taken into the body. Therapies like salt packs, poultices, hot compresses, color healing, magnetism, vibrator treatment, massage, osteopathic manipulation, dental therapy, colonics, enemas, antiseptics, inhalants, homeopathics, essential oils, and mud baths were prescribed. Substances used included oils, salts, herbs, iodine, witch hazel, bismuth, alcohol, castoria, turpentine, charcoal, animated ash, soda, cream of tartar, and camphor. Now, these were prescribed to overcome conditions that prevented proper digestion and assimilation of needed nutrients for the prescribed diet. The aim of the reading was to produce a healthy body, removing the cause of specific ailments. Readings would indicate if the patient's recovery was problematic. There was a waiting list for months for Cayce's services. Blumenthal and Brown went ahead with the plans for university as well to supplement the hospital, and a parallel service for the mind and spirit. In fact, the university was to dwarf the hospital and rival other universities respectively before psychic studies would even begin. Now, the Depression years caused Cayce to turn his attention towards spiritual teachings. In 1931, Cayce's friends and family asked how they could become psychic like him. Out of this seemingly simple question came an 11-year discourse that led to the creation of study groups at Cayce's hospital. From his altered state, Cayce relayed to this group that the purpose of life was not to become psychic, but to become a more spiritually aware and loving person. By 1931, 61 people had attended a meeting to carry on the work and form a new organization called the Association for Research and Enlightenment. In July, the new association was incorporated. That was in July of that same year, 1931. Now, members were drawn from all Protestant churches, Roman Catholic, Greek Catholic, Syrian Catholic, Armenian Catholic, from Christian Scientists and spiritualists, and many Oriental religions. Cayce's philosophy was, if it makes you a better member of your church, then it must be good. If it takes away from your church, it must be bad. The goal of the work was not something new, but something ancient and universal. Now, Cayce then gained national prominence in 1943 after the publication of a high-profile article in Coronet magazine entitled The Miracle Man of Virginia Beach. Now, World War II was taking its toll on American soldiers, and he felt he could not refuse families who requested help for their loved ones who were missing in action. Now, he increased the frequency of his readings to 8 per day to make an impression on the ever-growing pile of requests. He said it took a toll on his health, and he was emotionally drained and often fatigued. In fact, his readings himself scolded himself for attempting too much, and that he should limit his workload to just 2 life readings a day. He refused to do that. Cayce's own readings then said that if you don't back off, it's going to kill you. Now, from 1943 to 1944, over 1,300 readings were taken. By 1944, August of 1944, in fact, Cayce collapsed from strain. When he gave a reading on this situation, his instructions to himself were to rest until he was well or until he was dead. Cayce and Gertrude went away to the mountains of Virginia, but by the next month, Edgar Cayce suffered a stroke at the age of 67, and by September, he died. His wife, Gertrude, died 3 months later. Now, the association continued the work classifying and cross-referencing over 14,000 files of readings that had been taken throughout Cayce's life from 1901 to 1944. The results of these have been disseminated through the association's publication with members of the recipients of this material. Now, who were some of the clients of Edgar Cayce? Now, you think this guy may have been a quack, and who would want to be associated with him? Well, check this out. Cayce's clients included President Woodrow Wilson, Thomas Edison, Irving Berlin, George Gershwin. These were people who came to Edgar Cayce and asked for a reading. In 1971, Edgar Cayce's sons, Edgar and Hugh, published a book entitled The Outer Limits of Edgar Cayce's Power. And they claimed that Cayce's readings had an approximate 85% success rate. Now, Cayce advocated some controversial ideas in his trance. Cayce accepted the existence of aliens and Atlantis and claimed that Cayce claimed that Atlantis and its development was rapid. Another claim by Cayce is that soul entities on Earth intermingled with animals to produce things such as giants that were 12 feet tall. Maybe Bigfoot. In 2003, a book called The Skeptic's Dictionary, written by philosopher and skeptic Robert Todd Carroll, wrote, Cayce is one of the main people responsible for some of the sillier notions about Atlantis. That Carroll mentioned that some of Cayce's ideas, including his belief in a giant solar crystal activated by the sun and used to harness energy and provide power for Atlantis, and his prediction that in 1958 the United States would rediscover a death ray that had been used on Atlantis. In the 1930s, Cayce also incorrectly predicted that North America would experience chaos and Los Angeles and San Francisco would be among the cities destroyed. Later, New York would be destroyed. Of course, that didn't happen. Skeptics also say that Cayce's alleged psychic abilities were fakery or non-existent. Medical health experts are critical of Cayce's unorthodox treatments, in which they regard it as quackery due to the use of homeopathic remedies. Now, science writers and skeptics have alleged that the evidence for Cayce's alleged clairvoyant powers come from sensationalized newspaper articles, affidavits, anecdotes, and books, rather than the empirical evidence that was eventually evaluated. Martin Gardner, a skeptic, for example, wrote that all verified claims and descriptions from Cayce's criticized trances can be traced to ideas found in inaccurate authors' readings. In fact, Gardner also concluded that the traces of Cayce contained little bits of information gleaned from here and there and from occult literatures. Okay? Science writer Karen Solznow has also written, the reality is that the cures were hearsay and his treatments were homeopathic remedies. Cayce wasn't able to cure his own cousin. His own son died as a baby because he and his wife were afraid to try the remedy that Cayce prescribed while sleeping. Now, what was Edgar Cayce? Who was Edgar Cayce? Was he a shaman or a scam artist? Was he a psychic or a psycho? Now, you can't deny that Edgar Cayce was an interesting man. All data indicates that Cayce and his wife believed that what Cayce promoted was a benefit to others. He never made a ton of money off of this, okay? Those around him did, but Cayce himself did not. He literally worked himself to death for little or no money. Now, many of Cayce's cures also were common sense. Good diet, rest, relaxation. Friends, those can do wonders for a body. And his homeopathic theories were sound as well. That's my opinion anyway, because I'm a big fan of homeopathic solutions. I've used them successfully countless times. Now, could the whole trance into soothsaying predictions, could that be a bunch of baloney? Maybe. Or maybe not. Edgar Cayce was an interesting guy with a photographic memory. Perhaps he was torn by his photographic memory and these trances he went into and his Christian belief. You know, if I'm a good Christian and what I'm doing is from the devil, maybe I'm torn. It's hard to say. But Edgar Cayce was a very interesting man. And again, President Woodrow Wilson, Thomas Edison, Irving Berlin, George Gershwin, leaders of the day went to Edgar Cayce for readings. So there must have been something there. For more information, if you want to research Edgar Cayce, be my guest. He's an interesting guy. And Edgar Cayce is spelled Cayce, Cayce. Okay? Well, that's it. I'm done. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. JamesStrongShow@hotmail.com. That's my email address. Send me an email. I love to get emails from